There's no better way of proving that you've understood what you've learned than doing it all from scratch yourself. So here's the challenge for you. I want you to create a new React app that shows a single H1 element. And that H1 is going to show different pieces of text. So it's going to say good morning if the current time is between midnight and 12 p.m., so midday. It's going to say good afternoon if it's currently between midday and 6 p.m. And it's going to say good evening if it's between 6 p.m. and midnight. So you're going to be using some logic to render a different piece of text in that H1 showing on screen, depending on your local time. And then I want you to apply the style, which is under a class style called heading, to that H1. So I've already created this style for you, and I just want you to be able to apply it onto that H1 using what you've learned before. Now, the final thing I want you to do is to dynamically change the color of the H1 using inline styles. If currently it says good morning, then the text should show up as red. If it says good afternoon, it should show up as green. And if it's night, it should show up as blue. This is what it looks like in the end. As the current time is 16:55, it says good afternoon and it's green. If I change the date to, let's say it's now 10 a.m., it says good morning. And if I change this to 16 in the afternoon, 4 p.m. in the afternoon, and maybe 7 o'clock in the evening. This is going to apply everything that you've learned so far, and you might need to review some of those previous lessons or the previous code in the sandboxes. But I trust that you're going to do a great job, and you're going to be able to take yourself even further after you struggle a little bit and get it to work. Pause the video now and see if you can build this functionality using everything that you've learned. And then come back and we'll go through the solution together. So pause the video now and good luck. All right, so I hope you gave that a real good go. And if you got stuck, that you actually tried to struggle through it and search for solutions online rather than just coming straight to the solution video. Because it really is through the struggle and through debugging your code and through trial and error and lots of time spent messing with the code that you actually really level up. So don't worry, I'll still be here waiting for you. If you need some more time, go ahead and give it a real go. But if you've already completed it, or if you just need a few hints or tips and see if you can get over some hurdles, then let's go through the solution together. All right, the first part is easy. We've done this a few times now, so I'm just gonna go through it quickly. So now we've got to our render step, and it says that we have to create a single H1. So in this case, because we're just creating a single H1, I'm not going to bother putting it inside a div, and I'm just going to render it as it is. And then, of course, we're going to put it into our root div. And now we've got an H1 that doesn't say anything yet, so it's not very useful right now. Now, what we want is, depending on the current time, for it to say good morning or good afternoon or good evening. So that means we're probably going to need to inject some JavaScript in there, right? So we already know that we can get hold of the current date and time from a previous lesson. So let's create a const called date, and let's set it to a new date object. And then let's create another constant called current time. And we'll set that to the date.getHours. And of course, this is a method, so it requires those parentheses at the end. Now we can get hold of our current time. And you can see that in my console, I'm already getting 17, so 5 p.m. printed here. Now we're rest assured that that definitely works, and we can use that number to start figuring out what the current time is. If you've been stuck on this step, then head back to your code and see if you can fix it and solve the rest of the challenge. And then come back and we'll continue. But otherwise, let's continue. So we've got this current time, which we can use an if statement to check whether if it's between midnight and 12 p.m. So if current time is less than 12, then we'll say that in this case, it should be morning. So let's create a variable called greeting, and we're going to leave it blank to begin with. Now, if the current time was less than 12, namely it's morning, then we're going to change greeting to say good morning. But else if the current time is greater than 12, but it's less than 6 p.m., which remember is actually 18, then in this case, we'll set the greeting to equal good afternoon. And finally, in all other cases that's left out of the 24 hours, we're going to set the greeting to equal good night. So now we've got this greeting, which is going to hold some different pieces of data depending on the current time. And then we can insert that variable greeting inside our H1, of course, through the use of curly brackets. So inside here, we'll put that variable name in here, and bam, we've got that H1 populated with some text. So because right now it's 5 p.m., it's going to say good afternoon. And if we change the date to a custom date, so 2019, January the 1st at 10 a.m., then it says good morning. At 19 hours, it says good night. And at 14 hours, it says good afternoon. So it's working perfectly. So let's delete that. Now the next part asked us to apply the heading style in the styles.css. So in our style sheet, I already created some styles under a class style name of heading. So all we have to do is to apply it to our H1. And if you remember, that attribute name or the property name is called class name in JSX. And then we simply add it as a string. So it's called heading. And now our heading style gets applied to our text. It's much bigger, it's bolder, and it's got a line at the bottom. So now we're ready to tackle the very last part of the challenge, which is to dynamically change the color of the H1 using what we learned about inline CSS styles. So how do we add an inline CSS style? Well, we use the style property, and we're going to set it equal to a JavaScript object, which is going to be a custom style. So let's create that up here. Let's create a constant called custom style, and let's make it a JavaScript object with a color key, which we're going to set at some point in our code. So this color key is going to be red in the morning, green in the afternoon, and blue in the night. So that means that when our current time is less than 12, in addition to setting the greeting, we're also going to set the custom style object's color property to equal red. And when it's afternoon, that color property is going to be green. And when it's nighttime, it's going to be blue. And now, when we go into here, we can apply that style inside the style property by adding in the name of that object, which was called custom style. Now all our errors go away, and if we take a look at our website, you can see that afternoon is green, but 10 a.m. is morning, and 19 hours is night. So did you manage to solve this challenge? And if not, be sure to get back to your code and try and apply what you've learned in this video to see if you can manage to do it after we've gone through the solution. So of course, I'm going to add the sandbox as a link in the course resources. So you'll have the code here to refer to if you need it. But make sure that you've had enough practice with the code and had enough time to play around with it to understand it before you continue to the next lesson. But once you are done, then head over to the next lesson and we'll learn more about React components. So for all of that and more, I'll see you there.